Welcome to another edition of the In Search SEO podcast, where we paint the town red with search marketing insights. Superstar here with us today as the wonderfully wonderful Jenny Halasz chats up all about Google's ability to offer nuanced results on the SERP. Is Google living up to the hype? Does it consistently offer clear and nuanced results? How is the whole BERT thing working out up until this point? And where are the gaps in Google's interpretation skills? And what does that mean for your site? Plus, we break down how Google's using its entity understanding for story expansion that is pure marketing genius. I am your host, Mordy Oberstein, and I am joined by the adroit, by the intransigent, Sapir Carabello.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. I just want to share our pre-conversation that we had. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I said to Sapir, I just watched A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks about Mr. Rogers, and I've been on a Mr. Rogers kick ever since. And she's like, Mr. Rogers, who cares? She doesn't want, I said, oh, you have to watch this video. Mr. Rogers hugs a wonderful child, and he sees him 40 years later on stage, and it's a wonderful moment, and he's such a genuine angel. I'm like, this is a man who they said that he died because God needed a neighbor. And you're like, I don't care.
I don't even know who that is.
You were like talking about, let's just watch the Grammys and BTS. I'm gonna BTS versus Mr. Rogers? Seriously?
Leave me alone. Oh my god.
You know, I'm gonna have a very Mr. Rogers moment, and I'm going to say that
you watch
we
your
like
Mr.
you
Rogers,
just as
I'm gonna
you
watch
are.
My BTS, and
As flawed as you are, we still like you.
Thank you, Morty.
You're welcome. Do not forget, we put out a new episode of the In Search SEO podcast each and every Tuesday. You can find it on SoundCloud, you can find it on Stitcher, you can find it on Spotify, and you can find it on the Rank Ranger blog. And you, of course, can subscribe and should subscribe and hopefully will subscribe on iTunes. Also, do not forget that Rank Ranger not only offers one keyword research tool, not two keyword research tools, not only three keyword research tools, we have an entire suite of keyword research goodies. Oh, also, because of the whole featured snippet snafu that's going on, we'll get to that. Do not forget that Rank Ranger offers a multitude of featured snippet reporting, and we do count featured snippets as the top organic result in your rank tracking. Okay, had a great chat with Jenny Halasz. We've graded Google's nuanced performance. It's like a report card on Google, if you want to call it that. But before we hand out report cards, I want to take you on a trip that is Google's rapidly evolving understanding of entities and its convergence with Google as the ultimate marketing beast on the planet. Yes, we are going down another freaking SEO wormhole. Alrighty. So Google has this thing called the Google Story. You ever seen it, Sapir?
No.
No. Like Mr. Rogers? No. It's very much like an Instagram story, but it appears where? It appears on the Google SERP. Duh.
Oh,
wow. Yes. Okay, let me give you an example. It's been around for a while now, and it's been related to people like Mr. Rogers. Okay, so let's say you Google, let's take a shot at somebody. Okay, let's say you Google Tom Brady of the New England Patriots. He's a famous quarterback, married to Giselle, whatever her last name is, can't pronounce it. You know who she is, right?
Can you just not Talk about sports?
I was talking about models, Giselle, whatever her last name is, Bunchen.
Wait, Giselle?
She's married to Giselle. Tom Brady is married to Giselle, whatever her last name is.
I just know she was with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Whatever. Okay. Yeah. Well, evidently like 20 years ago because they have like a 12-year-old kid. Anyway. So if you Google Tom Brady, you'll get a knowledge panel. And in the knowledge panel, you'll see a card called See His Life in Images. And then when you click on that, you get an overlay of story awesomeness that shows multiple story cards, showing all the times that Tom Brady has cheated over the years.
Oh my god, stop it.
Stop what?
Stop. I don't know, talking about sports.
I'm talking about Google using... Okay, fine. Here's another non-sports example. Take an actor,
Thank you.
okay? Someone you probably have no idea who they are, Daniel Day-Lewis. tell me
Is he a-
you've seen
he acted
In the Name of the
like,
Father,
James
My Left
Bond,
Foot,
right?
Gangs
Is
of
he
New York,
Wait,
Lincoln,
not,
There
what?
Will Be Blood. Nothing. Okay, Daniel Day-Lewis,
Oh, wait. Wasn't he with Leonardo DiCaprio in that one movie,
Gangs of New York. Yes, I
Yeah,
said
I
that. You
watched
missed
it.
it.
Yeah.
You're going too slow.
I cannot.
Okay, by the way,
Okay.
I almost fell asleep in that movie when I first saw it. Years later, I better appreciated it. Anyway, so you click it, let's say you search for Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the greatest actors of our generation. You're like, I think I know him maybe. You'll get a background on his history and some of his career highlights, and it's pretty much the same for all famous people. You get a little bit of background of who they are, where they came from, sort of thing, and then you get the career highlights, and that makes sense because that's what we want to know about famous people. But Google has recently expanded its stories. Well, I actually expanded it over the summer, and yeah, we're going to talk about sports again because Google created a continuously evolving live story for Major League Baseball games. So basically, let's say you're watching the games halfway over, you would see the highlights in different cards of what happened up to that point. As the game kept going, or keeps going, hopefully this season they'll do the same thing, you'll have more cards added until you have the complete story for that game. So it's pretty amazing. Absolutely amazing. Whether or not you like sports, don't like sports, it's an absolutely amazing thing to see this like ever-growing, live-growing Google story. Anyway, that aside, Google has very recently expanded its stories to cover animals and bugs, like lions, giraffes, and bees. It's a 5-year-old's wonderland.
Wow.
Very cool. Now, what do you think Google shows here? What content about lions or bees does Google show?
How should I know?
I don't know. I'm asking
Mordy,
you to guess.
I-
I'm asking you to guess.
Listen, I, unlike you, actually have a life, so I don't Google lions and bees in my spare time.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe
So
with that life, you can research who Mr. freaking Rogers is. Anyway.
Anyways, you
Won't
tell
you-
me.
I'll tell you. About Mr.
Yeah.
Rogers? No, about what should be in a knowledge panel, Google story rather, for lions. Yes.
Yes.
Well, Google could go different ways with this. It can go very informational, like straight up information, like lions live in Africa. The genus is Pathera. If I probably didn't say that right. I looked it up before. I still can't say it right. And blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't. Do you know why?
Why?
Why? Because it's boring.
Okay.
Boring. It doesn't work for the entity. Google knows that. The same type of information that works for sports stars, for celebrities, for whoever, doesn't work for animals. Like, sports fans love stats. But that's not what people are looking for with animals. If you were to see a Google story about animals, about lions, roar,
Oh my god.
what would you want to see, Sapir?
I don't know. Lions courting rituals?
That's perverted, but okay.
That's
What
sweet.
did you want to see? Oh, you want to see? I see.
It's
Mhm.
romantic.
You want to see
okay?
lion coitus. That's basically what you're telling me. That's
Courting-
perverse.
What? No.
Oh. You just want to see the courting part without the lion sex.
Yes.
Okay. That's very romantic
It is.
and bizarre. You know what Google does in reality, doesn't show you that for good reason. It offers you 5 fun facts. Like the heaviest lion weighed 826 pounds and so forth. Google,
Wow, interesting.
it is interesting, right? Google gets the entity right. It knows. And this is important, by the way, this is important for sites that deal directly with entities. Pay attention to what I'm telling you here. Google knows what sort of content fits for the entity. So you might have, so think about it for your site. You might have the most fact-filled piece of content filled with every stupid scientific detail about lions. And this site may have an amazing backlink profile. And it may be super fast. And it may be super technically optimized and yada, yada, freaking yada. And it won't rank or have a very hard time ranking on page 1 because that's not how Google sees the entity.
What?
That was that was verbose. What? Okay. When you Google lion animal, I have to Google animal because otherwise I'll get the football team. Okay, yeah. Okay. Like bears, you have to do bears animal. Okay. There are 9 organic sites that rank for the query, at least when I did it. Okay. 6 of them, 2/3 of the organic ranking sites on page 1 for the term lions animal target kids specifically with what? Lots of boring information? No, with fun facts. Google's not dumb. It knows exactly what it's doing.
No kidding.
Yes, no kidding. I'm not kidding. It knows the entity. It knows what's meant to be viewed and by whom. Even adults love animal fun facts, right?
I'm pretty sure it's just you, Morty.
No, no. You don't like animal what is wrong with that's 2 strikes. That's 2 strikes. There's no Mr. Rogers things, and you don't like animal fun facts. I hope we don't get the strike 3 today, because I'll be depressed for the rest of the day if we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't want that.
No, we don't. Why would you want me to be depressed? That's weird.
Just saying.
Uh-huh.
We wouldn't want that.
No, right. I don't. Are you being sarcastic? No. No, of course I'm being serious. Okay. Google knows the entity. It knows what people want from that entity. And it aligns the story and the organic results to meet that specific understanding of the entity. Google knows that people, when it deals with animals, want cool, fun information. So that's why it's what ranks on page 1 of the SERP, and that's why it's what it shows in the Google story and not just your general scientific facts. So if you're going to deal with, let's say you deal with an entity directly. Let's say you deal with animals or whatever it is. You have to know how Google looks at that from the lens of intent. How does Google understand this entity in terms of what people want from it? And then for animals, it's that people want fun information. So you should add some fun information onto your page. And by the way, all of this leads to Google being a freaking marketing genius.
What do you mean?
Okay, so why are these stories showing up? Why is Google showing these stories?
To keep people inside its own properties now.
Yes, good answer. I knew you were going to say that. Everyone says that. Okay, that's the most common answer to all these sort of questions. Oh, because Google wants to keep you in their own ecosystem. Google hates websites. Google was No. Okay, to me, these stories are all about psychological impact. Google is it wants users to think that Google is a fun and interactive place to get info from. It's easier to see with the animals, but it works for celebrities as well. Okay, you see a story about the lions, and you are entertained. Go Google this and find this story and watch it. It's like watching a TV show. You feel the warmth of properly being entertained. There is a reciprocal response of warmth and affection to being properly entertained, just like when you watch Mr. Rogers. And this is what sets Google apart from other search engines. Think about it, okay? Google's understanding the psyche, and it's understanding how it can capitalize on it. Where does Bing do that? Bing doesn't even get content right. Bing is so worried about getting content right that it is not worried about understanding the deeper, the depth of the psyche and how to capitalize on that. And that is pushing Google so far past, so much deeper than anybody else. Not only that, but Google is targeting children here, and that's brilliant. Get them while they're young. Build up that association that Google is a fun, interactive source of content, information, and entertainment. It's brilliant marketing. It really is. It capitalizes on the deeper inner workings of the mind and the psyche. It's marketing without marketing because they're not advertising this. They're not saying, watch this. It's totally subliminal, and that is genius. And you're not going to say anything.
I have nothing to say.
It's genius.
Speechless. Right. Genius.
It's just spacing out on me. It's freaking genius. Freaking genius.
Right. Genius.
Oh, you're doing this silent Mr. Rogers thing. Like, live in the silence. I get it. I understand. Okay. From what's genius to what's not so genius as far as Google is concerned. Here's Jenny Halasz on how good Google is at being nuanced with its search results. Cut 1. Welcome to another In Search SEO podcast interview exclusive session. Today we have a most familiar face for you. She's a famed industry speaker, an expert author. She is the president of JLH Marketing. She is Jenny Halasz. Welcome.
Hi, Mordy. Thanks for that great introduction. Wow.
I aim to please and flatter. I got to butter you up a little bit before we get into the heart of the matter. So you've been doing SEO forever, and we could talk about that. But
forever.
I don't mean it in a bad way, only in a good way. We could also talk about the fact that you have one of the most outspoken social media voices that I've ever seen, and I love it, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I get a lot of flack for that.
Really?
But, I believe in being honest and being authentic. And
that's cool. I mean, is it
passionate about everything?
That's good. Is it hard to be so vulnerable on social media like that? Because I sometimes I do not try to talk about politics because I don't think it's going to go well. I try to avoid this topic or that topic, but you just kind of go for it, which I'm very much in awe of.
Oh, thank you. I've actually heard that from probably more people than I've heard tell me to shut up.
That's good. So. That's good. That says something.
Well, I mean, I'm very passionate about the subjects that I talk about on social media, but at the same time, there's always a person behind that other Twitter handle. And I've had some people say that I have attacked them or I have attacked other SEOs, and that's really not me. I might bring up a point and say, let's talk about it, but I'm really more interested in a healthy, constructive debate than just fighting with people.
Right, which is like so funny because I'm okay with pretty much any, well, not every, but most positions out there, as long as there's like a relatively calm, toned down conversation about it. It's just a conversation. No one's gonna die over it. But
yeah, exactly.
It sort of turns into these I don't know what you want to call them, like poo fights almost. Everyone's just like throwing crap at each other, and it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it really can be. I tend to try to just walk away from those kinds of arguments. And I know that I'm not going to change anybody's mind.
Right.
People have their minds made up. I'm more interested in what do you know that I don't know that I should be considering in my position.
That's cool.
And I think a lot of people don't get that.
Right. It is like a weird time in history. As a history person, I want to come back in like 50 years from now and see like, how do we interpret this? Because this is going to be interesting. It's a great time to be a historian.
Imagine what the history books are going to say about the last
mackerel.
8 years.
Unbelievable. Well, there's no sign of it slowing down. So let's talk about SEO and Google.
Well, I've got some strong opinions about that, too.
That's also good. That's perfect for a podcast. That's exactly what we want. The stronger, the better. Okay, so we're going to talk about BERT and search results and the nuance of search results and what's working, what's not working, and how BERT's affecting everything or not affecting anything, depending on how you look at it. But let's sort of get everybody caught up on the same page, on the same speed. What is BERT and how should it be, or how do we think it impacts search results?
So BERT, and I'm not going to remember the acronym right now.
No, me neither. Transformers is the last thing, because Transformers was my favorite cartoon as a kid.
Yes.
So right,
yeah.
So T for Transformers.
Transformers is the last word.
That's right.
The first word is bidirectional.
Right, I knew that too.
Which is super important.
So 50% is not bad.
Yeah, it's like bidirectional
encoding for representation. Right, yeah.
So the idea behind it is that it makes language more accessible. It makes it easier for a machine to understand language. The bidirectional piece of it is the really significant part, because instead of just looking at the words that surround another word on a page to get the intent, it can go forwards and backwards to try and figure out what it is that it means in that context.
Right.
The technology itself is completely awesome and very exciting, but the BERT algorithm in Google, it leaves a little bit to be desired.
Okay, so what do you mean by that? Because that's a lead on right there.
Yeah, I think that I always tell my clients you want to optimize for where Google wants to be, not where they are. And it's been really true with these core updates and this BERT algorithm that rolled out. And essentially, I think, there are some queries that Google's doing really well at. And those are the ones that they hold up and say, hey, it's working, this is great. And then there are other queries that just really don't get to the intent of the search. I have a really good example.
Oh, good, because I know we were messing around with this, and I'm thinking in my head, like, I know a good example of this, and I can't remember it, so I'm glad you do.
So I actually tweeted about this one, I think it was last week. One of my fellow SEOs, who is also in business for themselves, said, hey, does anybody know a good collections agency? Unfortunately, if you're in business for yourself, that's kind of at some point, you're probably going to deal with a collections agency. So I said, yeah, I used one like 4 years ago, and they were really great, but I don't remember the name of them. So I went to Google and typed in collections agency. I thought, I'll get something useful.
That's a good start.
Right?
That's a good start.
It's a collections agency.
That's what Google's for.
And I'm thinking, if I see the name of the company, I'll recognize it, and then I can tell him. Unfortunately, when I did the search collections agency, it was just like an entire page of ads. And all of the ads were for brokers, where you put in your information of what you need and what type of business you have, what type of collection you need to do, that sort of thing. And then they match you with potential collections agencies. That was not what I was looking for. So I modified my query to hire a collections agency.
Logical.
Maybe if I'm more specific, it will give
Quite logical.
No. This was all articles about how to hire a collections agency, when to hire a collections agency.
Nice.
Whether you should hire one when you're a small business, and what's the difference, and like, again, not a list of collections agencies.
That's really interesting, because with that sort of buy or commerce intent, so Google loves offering review sites. And I always think that's a great thing, because I always want to know about an insurance policy or whatever it is, except I never think about when you actually want to buy something. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Right.
When you're just like,
right.
I just want to hire a collections agency. I really don't care which one. I just need one. Let me take the first one on Google. No, you can't do that. And then what really drove it home for me is under the people also ask, there was a, how do I find a collections agency? This is going to be what I need, right?
It's going to say Google.
Click on it. I clicked on it and I opened it up, and it's how to find which collections agency you owe.
Ooh. Oh, that's good. That's so good.
It's just like, this is a 5-star example of why this is not working.
That's amazing. That's when intent goes too far.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I've been telling my clients, most of them are more like enterprise size clients, they can handle a little dip in organic, mostly just telling them, just hang in there. Google is going to figure this out. We're not going to change our strategy to become brokers or anything like that. We're just going to keep hanging tight. It's going to get figured out. But I've had plenty of clients and prospective clients who are like, this is my livelihood.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry, but if you've got all of your traffic wrapped up in organic search, you're already in trouble.
That's a major no-no. A major no-no. Especially now.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as if you have a little clothing store and there's a flood.
Right.
If you don't have something else coming in, whether it's, wholesalers or, something online with social or advertising or organic search, or paid, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's because it's free. We just rely, SEO is great. It's the panacea of all things. But how could you put all of your eggs in one basket like that?
Yeah, no, it's a really bad idea.
Yeah. Particularly if you hit by a core update, now what?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I've got a health client, a hospital system that I work with, and they have not. This is another thing that I think is really interesting. They really haven't lost any positions in terms of where they're ranking, but because of featured snippets and knowledge graph and all the other things, they are getting pushed down. And so their organic traffic has gone down significantly. But to get those featured snippets spots, they would have to basically become a health library.
Right.
And so they'd have to become like a WebMD or a Healthline or something like that. And they're like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to educate people about what cancer is. We want to treat them. You know? And it's frustrating for sure, because if you need a great cancer surgeon in the area that they're in, you want that hospital. They're world renowned for treating certain types of cancer, but you do a search like this
Right.
specific type of cancer surgery, skull-based tumor or something like that, you get all of these sites that tell you what it is, not how to treat it or how to find a surgeon or if your insurance is accepted or anything like that.
At what point, though, does Google say to itself, great, we're targeting multiple intents? So on this, you're trying to find some kind of cancer surgeon or whatever it is. So we'll show you all about your cancer and all about the surgery and how to pick the right one. And maybe there'll be a spot or two for the actual surgeon themselves. At what point does the diversity become a problem with personalization? Like, I don't want that. I want the surgeon, or I want the review. I don't want the surgeon. How is it able to both do diversity and personalization at the same time? Because I feel like it's heading to a point where it's going to be stuck.
If I could solve that problem, I would create my own search engine and never take Google. I mean, it is a really big problem. And I think that, when you add in the personalization element, certainly there's map listings. That's ideally where my client wants to be.
Right.
But what's happening is so many of these searches don't have map listings on them anymore.
Right. Or they have them at the bottom of the page where you don't even see it.
They become these health library searches.
Yeah.
And
a little too much on the EAT authority.
Yeah. It's frustrating. Even I have a couple of different autoimmune conditions, and if you've ever had autoimmune, you know that doctors really don't know what causes them or how to treat them. So you really have to go into the more alternative medicine.
Oh, forget that. Google hates that.
To try to address it.
Right.
And they're suppressing all of that
It's
content
a lot.
in
It's hard.
favor of, I shouldn't say suppressing. They're not suppressing. Let's not get into that.
We can get into that.
Mercola wasn't penalized.
Right. I love that, by the way. On his website says, why Google doesn't like me.
Right.
Yes, that's hilarious.
Google doesn't care about any specific site. What they care about is surfacing good peer-reviewed content. But the problem with that in the healthcare industry is that some of the best content and some of the best studies come from observational evidence. And if we don't have that, this worked, but it's not, FDA approved, then we don't ever grow and improve as a society in terms of our healthcare.
My wife is into this. She's a nurse, and she and she likes alternative medicine practices. If she's not anti, people view it as like it's one or the other. Either I'm a mainstream medicine person or I like all the alternative medicine stuff. I'm not a medicine person. I hate the doctor, so I'm like the worst person about. I faint at the doctor, which is ironic that I married a nurse. But anyway, it's not one or the other. My wife is a mainstream nurse. She practices mainstream medicine, whatever you want to call it, and she also likes the homeopathic sort of remedies at the same time. And there'll be points where she's like, I can't find what I'm looking for. It's a pain in the neck. But is that because there are so many problems or so many issues with some of the content on these sites that Google's gone a little bit too extreme, but for good reason? Or is Google really in the wrong? It's like a fine line.
That's a good question. Yeah, it really is a fine line. I think that, well, I have one client who's kind of alternative medicine. It's they provide exercises to help you through injuries as opposed to just taking in a leave every day, that sort of thing, geared toward using exercise as a way to cure a lot of different ills, which is fine unless you have a fracture or something. So that was one of the things that we talked about was, you've got this and it's great and a lot of people like it, but you need to offer that first step of,
oh, that's interesting.
Don't do this if you have this type of pain or this type of swelling, or link them to another page. The guy who offers the exercises is a medical physician,
right?
But I don't think he does a really good job of differentiating where the traditional medicine ends and the alternative medicine starts.
This is what happens when you get stuck in a ruts about, I think this and that's all wrong, and I think this and that's all wrong, and then you get your rankings killed that way.
Exactly.
Right. So where does BERT fit into all of this? Or does it fit into all of this?
I mean, it fits into this as that's really the ideal.
Right. I mean,
get to that point where the search engines can use the technology the way it's intended to be used to identify
what's real, right? It's just so funny, by the way, that Google says, only 10% of all queries are influenced by or are affected by BERT. But Google looks at every single piece of web content and includes BERT as part of that. I just saw an article, I think it was today, John Mueller said the same thing. We use BERT to look at web content. So yeah, BERT impacts the query itself 10% of the time, but all web pages have content on it. Most of it, well, not all. Most web pages have content on it. So BERT's applicable to that. So BERT's applying to everything. But it's funny, though, because at a certain point, we don't really know what BERT's going to be. Imagine RankBrain 2016. So it's meant to do X, Y, and Z. But we have no idea what Google is going to do with it. And only looking back now, okay, here's how it worked out. But
and frankly, it was really messy when it
first
rolled.
It was really messy.
We were complaining about all the same things.
Because it's machine learning. It's meant to learn and improve and refine and recalibrate and go forward.
Right.
Yeah. Which is a funny thing. We kind of forget the machine learning part when we talk about the machine learning properties. BERT came out. Your rankings are all going to change in 3 seconds flat.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything's going to be perfect.
Right.
Right away.
Or havoc in 3 seconds. Either way, it's all going to be in 3 seconds.
Well, when we get into the machine learning aspect of things, I do believe that the machines are learning some of the wrong things. That there are some inputs that are occurring that are not helping, that may even be hurting.
Interesting. Anything in particular?
I think there's some noise there. Well, people talk about click through, right? Click through from Google. And yes, there have been studies that show that temporarily a very high click through can push you up a couple of spots, but it's not something you can sustain, that you should go out and hire some company to click on your site, over and over and over again. No, do you remember Mechanical Turk?
No.
It was a thing where you could hire people from all over the world to just click on stuff.
Brilliant. Like click fraud. Which is still happening, but yeah.
It absolutely was.
It's brilliant. People think of everything.
This anymore. But I mean, stuff like that type of gaming, it's just never going to be a sustainable thing.
Right.
But to get back to my point, I digress.
we love digression here. So
that click through from Google, a lot of people will just click on the first result they see. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was good or bad for the query, or that if they bounce back to the search results right away, that necessarily means that's a bad result.
Yep.
I think that there's a lot of query refinement that happens. People do studies. I think it was Rand Fishkin did one where he said, I think 50% of all queries
don't
result in a click. My question is, how much of that is due to query refinement? Which I suspect it's a lot.
Yeah, that's probably a lot.
And that's something that you would never know unless you were actually controlling the search results and looking at those analytics.
I had
so
data
things
on
like
that.
I think, studies like that, I think, lead us down the wrong path.
I so agree with you on that. But there's so much nuance in that. It's so, first off, I would imagine it's very query specific. I was speaking at a conference for technical writers, and we were talking about this, and they don't seem to have a problem because if you're looking at a complicated set of instructions and it shows up in a feature snip with 8 steps, you're still going to click on the full thing. It's not enough. So it really depends on the vertical, the type of the query. I think there's so much nuance. I'm very curious to know what sort of keywords were included in that data set. Was it very much high search volume? What's playing at the cinema? Because I don't click on anything for that. Or what was the Steelers score? Well, there's no Steelers. They got kicked out of the playoffs. Rather, they didn't even make the playoffs. But when they were in season, I don't go to ESPN for a score. I just look at Google. But I don't think that reflects the average user. Right. I do many queries. I do some queries like that. I do many queries that are very specific and very nuanced where I'm not going to get that many SERP features.
Right. And I think that's something that as an industry we have to get a lot better at.
Yeah.
That kind of, okay, this is interesting, and thanks for doing the study. This is cool. But can I ask some questions about it?
No questions.
No, that's exactly it.
It's very interesting. Lines are drawn. Yes, it's very weird. And it's very personal. I don't get it.
I mean, I got raked over the coals because I dared to suggest that Google not link directly to SEOs.
Right. Oh, I do remember that. It's
and then I got told I was, attacking all of these other people that had been linked to, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just saying, as an industry, can we have a conversation here?
It's getting bad.
This challenge. You know what? I wrote an article about it. It's on my blog.
Okay, I'll link to it. Okay.
And it is the most read and highest time on site blog that I have ever written in my entire career. And it has almost zero social engagement.
That's also interesting. That is interesting. I find the same thing. I have these posts that do really well, but not on social media.
Well, this one I am absolutely convinced
that makes
because everybody read it, but everybody's afraid to talk about it.
There are many things, I will admit this, because of my job, there are certain things I feel like I can or can't say. And it's frustrating because they're not horrible things. They may be border on conspiracy theories about Google. Fine. Okay. Is that the worst thing? No. But why do I feel like I can't say it? That sucks.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I wrote in that article is questioning Google is not a new thing for me.
Right.
I have been doing this for the last at least 10 years. I have dozens of articles out there where I have said, Google, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
It's our job.
There's nothing wrong with it. No one gets hurt from questioning Google. I mean, obviously, there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it, but that's neither here nor there.
Saying, you guys suck.
Right. That's very nuanced. Speaking of nuance. Gosh.
But this is an area that really is baffling to me. Why we would not want to question each other and offer constructive criticism so that we can improve.
There's so much. I think there's so much jockeying for position almost. No pun intended in that. Right. I'm trying to make a name for myself, or I already have a name. I'm trying to maintain that name, so I have to market myself as X, or I have to market myself as Y. Which is like, come on, at a certain point, like you have to be a little bit real.
Yeah.
And why is that a problem? I don't know. I don't
And
know a good answer.
listen, I mean, like, this is gonna segue into politics just a little bit,
That's
and then
cool.
it's gonna come back.
Okay.
But it's about privilege.
Okay.
So you understand the concept of privilege,
Yes.
right? That some of us have more ability to talk about things and to do things than others because of our race or our sex or our socioeconomic background, whatever it may be.
Yep.
I am an independent woman. I work for myself. I've made a name for myself. I've worked really hard to do that. And I, at this point, consider not just me, but some of us who've been in the industry a really long time and have seen things all the way back to, say, Florida. You know, I think that we have a responsibility to the industry to keep it moving forward. And from my perspective, I have the privilege to be able to say some of these things on social media because I don't have to worry about getting fired.
Right.
I don't have to worry about people just saying, oh, she is just like, we're not going to talk to her anymore.
Yep.
You know? And
I've seen that, by the way, on Twitter. People say, I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I've been blocked by a couple of people. And not because I was being mean, just because they didn't want to hear what I had to say.
I've never seen you be mean on Twitter before.
Thank you.
Or off Twitter before, but
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm not a mean
No.
person. Really not.
Clearly not.
But yeah, it's my privilege, you know? I need to use that privilege in a positive way. And whether it's getting people to talk about the mental health issues that we have in our industry, talking about getting more women in front of cameras and on stages, and feeling more comfortable to work in the tech area in particular of SEO, you know, whatever it may be, I feel a responsibility, and almost a calling to do what I can.
Kudos. Just kudos. No, there's all. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we can go into this. I don't want to go down this wormhole too much, but there's a lot with mental health issues in the industry. There's a lot of stress and anxieties in the industry. I think a lot of it has to do, at least for me, coming from backgrounds that are not. I don't have a computer science background. I don't have this background. I don't have that background. But I'm doing this. I learned this. I studied this. I worked hard on this. You know, what's it called? It's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't get it out of my mouth.
Like imposter
syndrome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like, there's such a major. I will admit that is a problem for me. I feel like that all the time. Like, who?
That is a problem for everybody in this industry.
But it's only a few people. I'll call it Nikki Mosier talks about it a lot, or she has talked about it a lot in the past. There are people who talk about it, and it's a big deal, and it should be talked about more. And I feel like there is a little bit of a stigma about it in a weird sort of way. So kudos is all I'm trying to say.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think we can begin to break down those barriers.
Yeah, I hope so. Okay, back to BERT.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say one of the ways that we can do that is by giving people credit that if you saw something or you experienced something in this industry, we're going to listen to you and we're going to form our own opinions about it, obviously, but we're going to consider what you're seeing. And so back to BERT, the same kind of thing, right? We're seeing things that aren't matching up with intent, and we're saying, hey, this is a challenge, and it's very hard to get anybody to engage with you on that. And I think that one thing, if people take nothing else away from this podcast, is keep in mind that if your organic traffic is dropping, but your ranks are not changing, you are probably getting pushed down by those featured snippets, those knowledge graphs. And a little plug for Rank Ranger, because I really love how you all do this, how
The above the fold.
Exactly where the piece is, and then the above the fold is priceless.
It's how you know how competitive you really are. So by the way, thank you. I appreciate that.
Tell you how great that is.
Our dev team is awesome. They are. So
they really are.
They really are. They're really amazing. I swear, like the amount of things they push out, no one realizes it, but they're amazing. And I don't think I've ever plugged the dev team on the podcast. So kudos to the dev team if you're listening, which I hope they are. Well, let's find out if they are next week.
Yeah, kudos to the dev team.
Kudos to the dev team. Let's see if you heard this podcast. We're gonna check on you.
Well, you want to talk about like personal marketing? You totally got me on this one. So I have to admit, I had never heard of Rank Ranger.
That's okay.
And when you said, "Hey, I need people for the podcast," and I said, "Yeah, hey, that would be fun." I at the same time had a client who was looking for a new rank tracking system. Does so much more than rank tracking.
Yes, we do.
But you know what I mean. I demoed the tool and asked for something specific that I don't think any of the other tools do. And Svi, am I saying his name?
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Svi was like, let me check on that for you because it might even be something that our developers could build. And then he came back to me a couple days later and he was like, oh, it already works that way. They already built it that way.
He's, by the way, personally, he's amazing. I love Svi. So shout out to Svi also.
Really like him too.
He's so amazing. Very, super dedicated, super nice. There's not a cynical bone in his body, which is very odd for me because I don't know how to relate to that. But he's a really, he's a really, really good guy. So I wanted to ask you, just to sort of wrap it up on the BERT thing. What does it look like if Google were to get it right to you? It's almost like a therapeutic sort of question. Like, what does health look like? What does SERP health look like?
That's a tough one.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Yeah. I think it looks different to every person. I think that's an area where personalization needs to really be even deeper than it is today. And I think you'll get some pushback from people who are like, well, I don't want Google to know all this stuff about me. Newsflash.
They already do. Right.
They already know. So being able to opt in to some things like if I could opt in to telling Google that I have certain autoimmune diseases, or if I could opt in to telling Google that I get ear infections all the time.
Oh, that sucks.
Some of that stuff would be maybe a little bit better suited for me as the user.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that they're trying to do with the voice search capabilities. I know Microsoft at Cortana has been working on this. The ability to kind of really get to know the individual that's using the system.
Right.
Because once we get to the point where we can connect all of those dots, that's when search becomes truly useful.
Yeah. Which makes a lot, the idea of inputting makes a lot of sense. I am always advocating for the idea that Google should relinquish a little bit of control of the SERP and let the user input on the SERP. Right? I don't want review sites. Get rid of those. I want product sites. I want local sites. Give me some control here. I ultimately think Google will have to do that. Otherwise, it's almost personalization will become pointless at a certain point if you don't let the user opt in or give some information in whatever way it is. There's no other way that's going to be able to do it. It's going to get. What are you going to be left with? You're going to be left with a set of intent diverse SERPs where you have two results about reviews and two local results and two this. You're not going to meet anybody in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that you could probably divide it into like 3 tabs,
Right.
One is general, one is local, one is what do others think?
Yes, that's a great idea. Right. So, one day.
Give the user a little bit more
little bit of control, which is not Google's thing.
Nope.
As much as they say that you're in charge of your search journey. Yeah, really, you're in charge, and I can't really do anything, but yeah, I'm in charge. Good marketing.
Yeah, and I mean, connect some of these dots too, right? I have a Google Home. I have an Android phone. I have I spend time on Google all the time.
I'm always logged in.
Searches
Knows exactly where I went.
Continuously, I'm always logged in. Like,
Right.
connect some of these dots for me.
One day, to quote my favorite.
I even use Google Pay, so they know what I buy.
Good.
You know, like,
That's like serious. Like, how do they not at that point? How do you not know? Because I'm an Amazon person. I never use any of Google's shopping experiences, or I don't let them have any of my credit card numbers. But God bless you for letting them have that. I mean, they should be able to personalize your SERP pretty well at this point.
they're gonna get it anyway.
They're gonna get it anyway. True. I don't know. I don't. You know what it is? It's nothing against Google. I just don't associate Google with shopping.
Yeah.
It just doesn't connect.
Well, I mean, I do a lot of my shopping on Amazon.
Right.
And so my Alexa has learned exactly. Stop, Alexa. It has learned the things that I like to buy, so
Right.
it can recommend. You know, if I say I need laundry detergent, it can tell me what the last thing I ordered was, that sort of thing.
And it's sort of funny because Amazon, when it does that, doesn't bother people. But when
It's
Google
super
does
helpful.
that, right, it's very helpful. But if Google were to do something like that, I'd be creeped out.
Yeah, I think you just have to. I
Let
don't know. I've always looked at privacy as an illusion.
I have 4 children. I have no privacy.
Oh, well, I have 2, so
It's same difference. It's qualitatively just a matter of numbers at that point. I don't have a bed anymore. I don't have anything.
Okay.
I was like, why did you sleep on the couch in your office? I'm like, because there were 3 children in the bed. I had nowhere to go. So it goes.
How old are you?
I have twin 8-year-olds. So we went from like 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds flat. The best story was when we first got pregnant. So I was like, oh my God, we're pregnant. And I was like, oh, how could you say that? This is such a happy moment. I'm like, no, this is crazy. Then when she found out we're having twins, I'm like, oh, great, twins. Like 1, 2, what's the difference? She's like, oh no, twins. I'm like, it's reversed now. You should be seriously happy. And then I have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So they're sort of
my
like Irish
goodness.
twins, except we're not Irish. But yeah,
Oh my goodness. Ugh.
they're like a
I have 2
handful.
boys, and they're 9 and 13.
So yeah, oh boy, no,
So,
boys are.
like,
I have all boys.
eventually you'll get your privacy in your life back.
I would hope at 13 they're not in my bed anymore.
No,
Okay.
no, my 13-year-old barely wants to be hugged
Right, right.
ever in public.
Never. It's
You're embarrassing me, Mom.
it's children are something. It's like God bless them, like the most joyous thing in the world, the most frustrating thing in the world. It's every possible extreme bound up into one.
My mother has always said the reason that kids are so cute is so you won't kill
Right,
them.
right. That makes sense because the little ones are really cute and they're really crazy. Okay, so I have this last thing that I want to do. It's called Optimize
Okay.
It or Disavow. It's a game. And
Okay.
I'm going to give you 2 choices. It's a zero-sum world. I mean, you could say it depends, but we discourage that if possible. And either 2 really good choices, and you have to choose one good choice over another good choice, or 2 really bad choices, and you're stuck choosing a bad choice over another bad choice. So this is the Jenny Halasz version of Optimize It or Disavow It. So speaking about BERT, it's not that bad. You don't have to be nervous. Just a little bit. Speaking about BERT, if you had the choice to invest in doing either optimizing for voice search or optimizing your audio content with the notion that BERT will better understand audio transcriptions or BERT will help Google better understand voice queries, which one do you favor?
I would favor voice queries. I don't think there's really anything you can do right this minute to optimize for voice.
Right.
Like anybody who's trying to sell you that is snake oil.
That was one of my top 5 fall in your face trends of 2020. Optimize for voice search. Okay.
But
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I would optimize for voice search because I think that podcasting is certainly having a moment. I
Yeah,
mean, we are seeing so
here we
many great
are.
podcasts, and people are loving them and consuming them like candy. Um, but voice search, I think, has a longer term, a longer life span. I fully expect us to get at some point to the point where we don't even use keyboards.
It's like that Star Trek 4 movie where they, oh, the keyboard. How quaint. Right.
You know they don't teach keyboarding in high school
Oh,
anymore.
really?
Mm.
They still teach like social studies and science in high school?
Yeah, they
That's
do.
good. Okay.
But yeah, they don't even
Wow.
teach keyboarding
I guess that
anymore.
makes even my little kids, my 8-year-olds they're okay on a keyboard.
Yeah, and my kids are okay at it too, but like the traditional QWERTY keyboard is
Gone.
going the way of the
Right.
dodo because
That's
they're
interesting.
typing on iPads
Thumbs.
and with their thumbs
Right.
and doing swipe on the phone.
There's
I
gonna
mean,
be
my kids still make fun of me because I type on my phone with 2 thumbs instead of swiping.
there's going to be a point in time where physical therapists are going to have to do major work on people's thumbs in the next like 30,
I know,
40
right?
years. It's like if you want a good niche to get into, that's it.
Chiropractic of the thumbs.
I'm a thumb specialist.
Yeah, so definitely voice, because I definitely think that there's huge potential in that. And podcasts are awesome, but I think that they're probably I don't think podcasts will go away, but I don't think the need for transcription will stay around.
Well, hopefully for a little while because I like this podcast. But yeah, I happen to agree with you.
Well, that's it. What I'm saying is like the podcast will stick around, but you won't have to transcribe it.
Oh, that's cool. You mean it'll just know from audio.
If it understands, if the audio is understood
Right.
well enough.
So if you're a New Yorker who
there's
talks
no
too
need to
fast, you're in trouble.
Right.
Right. Slow it down. That makes a lot of sense. As soon as we stop asking like the voice devices stupid queries like what's my favorite color? Does not compute. Duh, of course not. I'm so smart. I stumped Google. Look at me. I'm a genius. Yeah.
Do you play with the Easter eggs when they come out? Like
Yeah.
could have asked the Amazon voice thing that's gonna talk to me if
I do that. I do all the Google Doodle. You know, like your the spidget, the spinner widget thing. All these little things. I don't know why I like them, but yeah, I like them because they're fun.
I mean, like we called the Amazon thing Alex.
Okay.
When we're in the house, and we don't want it.
That's smart.
Talking to us. So at Halloween, you could ask Alex what Halloween costume you should wear.
Nice.
And it asked you a series of questions, and then it gave you an answer.
That's awesome.
What Halloween costume you should wear. It was pretty fun.
It is pretty fun.
And Google did the same thing.
It's a lot of fun. Just at a certain point, novelty is not what's going to drive voice search to the level of extremes that we are predicting in the SEO community. It's got to go past the novelty at some point.
Right.
But we're not there yet. I think we're far away from that.
Oh, we're very far away. I tried to ask my phone this morning what the weather was going to be, and it says, you have to log in for that. Really?
It's like, open a shade. Stick your hand outside.
You'll need to log in for that information.
That's very sensitive information.
I'm in my home location. I was just logged into the phone like 30 seconds ago, you know?
This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, Jenny, thank you so much. We're out of time for today. I really appreciate you coming on. This was amazingly fun. We should do it again.
This was so much fun.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
And we are back to your regularly scheduled In Search SEO podcast. It's a very hard line to walk. Google can be so good and so bad at the same time. Particularly if you're local, you see this all the time, right? You tell people, Google is so advanced. There's so much machine learning. There's so much depth and qualitative understanding. And then the next sentence, you're like, yeah, but Google can't figure out spam in the local packet. You're like, yeah, that's weird. It is so hot or cold sometimes, Google. So advanced, yet so basic at the same time. It's actually a little bit hard to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm.
What do you want me to say?
I don't know, something. You're the co-host of this show, and that's not my job. That's your job.
I'm agreeing with you.
You are.
This time.
Oh, you're agreeing with
You
me.
should
I'm not. I'm
thank
sorry.
me.
I'm just not used to that. Okay.
Yeah, don't get used to it.
I'll try not to. I'll try not
Yeah.
to. I'll try not to. But we love you just the way you are, Sapir, just like Mr. Rogers would say.
Shut up.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about with the news. There's a lot of news going on. So I can keep yapping away, but we should probably get into it. So Sapir, could you and your non-Mr. Rogers self please hit it with the news?
Causing chaos throughout the industry.
Chaos. Sorry.
Google has stopped duplicating the URL shown within a featured snippet. Instead of the URL showing in the snippet and in the organic results, page 1 will only show the URL in the featured snippet itself.
Oh my god, this has been freaking insane. I don't know. Okay, we should probably do a whole episode to this.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where to start. Okay, let's start with this. 1, what do you consider the feature snippet now in terms of rank tracking? We're a rank tracker, so we should probably talk about this. Is it... Okay, wait, slow down, Morty. There's so much to talk about here. Google said that, we're gonna show the okay, slow down, Morty. Brain's working too fast. Oh my god.
Oh, breathe, Morty.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Okay. It used to be that your URL would be in the feature snippet and it'd be somewhere in the top 5 results, more or less. Okay, the average we used to see was about 2.5. So between 2 or 3, that's where position 2 or 3, that's where Google is pulling the snippet from. That's no longer. Google's saying the only time you will see the URL on page 1 is inside the feature snippet. Then Google seemed to imply that, we're automatically going to push it to position number 11, we'll call it, or the first result on page 2. Then Google said, no, we're not officially putting it on the first result on page 2. It could be anywhere, page 2, page 3, page 4, wherever, just not page 1. Turns out, by the way, and we've run through this, we have not found any featured snippet URL that used to rank organically on page 1 not showing in the top result on page 2, which brings up a whole, question of manual manipulation of the SERP and all that, yada, 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 yada. And that's a whole problem for Google. Then on top of that, okay, there's a whole, what about my Search Console? No, Search Console should be fine, because Google counts the feature snippet inside the Search Console reports, right? Your performance reports. But there's something called an Explore panel. It looks like a feature snippet. It looks like a knowledge panel and appears on the right side of the page. Those are not tracked in Search Console the same way. So now you are seeing, that used to be fine because you would show up in this panel on the right side of the page and in the organic results. Okay. But now you don't show up on page 1. So now what do? So now Google's saying we're going to move the Explore panel, featured snippet, knowledge panel hybrid to the main column on the SERP, which is, by the way, going to push down organic results when they do that. Although you get an organic result back on the SERP for the mere fact that you don't have the duplicate URL on page 1. Fine. Now, on top of this, what do you consider the feature snippet URL when tracking rank? I mean, you could look at it as a featured snippet is a non-organic property. We are not going to track the rank of that URL organically. It's position 0. It's not position 1. Which means then that the first time that you'll track your URL is when it's on page 2 or page 3. So that looks like you're doing a terrible job of reporting to your clients that way. Which is why, by the way, at Rank Ranger, we have said, we have already made the change. Featured snippets are tracked as position 1. So you get a featured snippet, your rank is number 1, and of course we annotate that you got a featured snippet, and that's why you're position 1 versus a non-featured snippet position 1 ranking, because CTR could be totally different, and you need to know this. So that's pretty much my summary of the insanity. I think what Google should have done here was, you rank on page 1 inside the featured snippet, and that's it. Why push it to page 2, unorganically, no pun intended? Why have it again on page 3? I don't understand. Like, if it's page 1 content, it should be on page 1. Why is it ranking on page 3? Let's say it's not at the top of the page 2 SERP. It's on page 3. Google randomly pushed it off page 1 onto page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why is it there? If it's page 1 content, it should be on page 1. If you don't want duplicate content on page 1, to just get rid of the URL. By Google doing this like weird, let's have our cake and eat it too sort of thing, it's on page 1. As a feature snippet, it's on page 3, 4, 5, 6. As a non-feature snippet, organic URL, it's setting itself up for disaster, in my opinion. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Mordy.
You're welcome.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. I think
Okay.
maybe next week we'll talk about why Google did this. Okay, fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, goodbye to datavocabulary.org. As of April 6, Google will not support structured data markup from datavocabulary.org, meaning if you employ the markup and currently get rich results on the SERP for such pages, well, you will no longer.
As of April 6th.
Right.
Right, as of April 6th. Not like today, as of April 6th.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that.
You're
That's
welcome.
important.
Okay.
I'm in Mr. Rogers' mood. Why, thank you for sharing that.
Let's move on. Google will be removing its sponsored labels from the Google Flights feature. That's because Google will no longer take money from the airlines nor promote booking sites.
So this is big news, and it got lost in the feature snippet snafu. So when you right now, okay, I don't think it went into effect yet. Maybe as this podcast gets released, it will be in effect. But as I'm recording this, if you go and Google like JFK to LAX, those are airports in America, you'll get a flights box, Google Flights, and it'll tell you all the different flights you can get. Blah 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 blah. It would say sponsored there because when Google, let's say you book with Delta through that box, Delta would pay Google a referral fee, and there'd be all sorts of in this box to be advertising from the booking sites. Google's saying we're not taking any more sponsorships from this. We're taking the sponsored labels out because of this. My only question is, what is the next revenue model for Google Flights? Because it's not like, oh, we're making it totally, we're to be totally organic. We're not taking any money off. No, they're going to make money off this thing. I think, by the way, from what I can tell, that most airlines didn't participate in the referral program. And why should they, I guess? So I think Google realized we need a different model to make money here. So I don't think it's about Google being altruistic like Mr. Rogers would be. I think it's about Google just saying we need to find a better way to make money here.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Google has said that they will continue to experiment with the use of favicons on the desktop SERP. Many users are now seeing the mobile SERP format on desktop, save for the favicons.
Right. So you have your colorless ad label, and then you have the favicons, and you have the black URL, not the green URL on top of the results. That's what the desktop SERP looks like. It mimics the mobile SERP. You may have started to notice that Google's taken the favicons off. So it's kept the colorless ad label, it's kept the smaller colorless URL, and so forth. But the favicons are gone. Google said we're going to experiment with this. What they said was, we had a wonderful response on mobile when we did this. On desktop too, there's been wonderful feedback, whatever it is. But it seemed to imply that maybe not all the feedback was good. And that makes sense to me because I said last week, even though I called them by the wrong name, the desktop SERP looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. It doesn't work. Last week I called him Jason Pollock, which I don't know why I did that because I actually like him and had a picture of him in my office. Not him, of his art in my office for a long time. Anyway, I think that you're going to end up without the favicons on desktop. Can I tell you, by the way? I'm sorry to ramble on this. I saw an example that Search Engine Land posted. I forgot what the query was, but it had the AT&T symbol, it had the Verizon symbol, whatever it was. It looked like, like in hockey, the boards, or in baseball, the back wall, whatever sport or in soccer, the out of bounds surrounding little wall they have there that's filled with sponsorships. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
That's what the SERP looks like, as sponsored by AT&T, as sponsored by Verizon. It has a really bad feel to it. Anyway, I'm done rambling about this.
Thank you.
Yes. So, Sapir, thank you so much for the news. That was very enlightening, very awesome, very wonderful. Yeah. You did
as usual.
As usual. I'm in Mr. Rogers' mood. We really appreciate your wonderful sharing of your knowledge, and we appreciate you just as who you are. Which brings us now to, and I should have asked a Mr. Rogers question for this. Nuts, I screwed it up. Okay. This brings us to our fun SEO send-off question. And I should have asked a Mr. Rogers question, but you would have known the answer anyway. But we'll go with your question. which was
What?
I'm rambling. Just ignore it. It's fine.
Okay.
Take it away,
So-
Sapir. Take it away.
This week, we're asking.
Not we, you.
Okay, I'm asking.
Mm-hmm. Let's be accurate.
What is Google's favorite chocolate bar?
That's actually a good question.
Is it?
Does it have to be Can it be a candy bar? Does it have to be chocolate?
Yeah, whatever.
It can be whatever. Oh, look. Oh, you're not so strict about the rules here.
Yeah. Tell us your answer.
Please, this is a Mr. Rogers episode. Please tell me your answer. I'd be happy to share my thoughts with you and the audience. I'm gonna go with Payday. For those of you who don't know this, it's a peanut butter, caramel, and nougat, I think. It's very delicious. It's very tasty. It's very peanutty, and it's called Payday because Google has changed the desktop SERP so that it becomes Payday for it. So you click on the ads because the ads look more organic. So Payday.
Wow,
Payday.
That's a good answer.
That's a good. I know. That's why they pay me to do this.
All right.
And what is your answer? Please.
I have no answer.
Oh no. This is the Mr. Rogers episode. Please share your thoughts with us. We would be so upset if we didn't get your thoughts and feelings on this question. You are our friend and neighbor.
I think your answer is enough.
Okay, Mr. Rogers aside, you couldn't think of a freaking chocolate bar, candy bar to answer the question with? There are not enough varieties. Like, I'm on the spot, right? You can say Snickers because Google satisfies your search hunger. Or whatchamacallit. Because I'm not sure I got the right results. Whatchamacallit. I could keep going. Should I keep going? How about Kit Kat? As in, hey, Google, give me a break with these results. You couldn't think of one chocolate bar? You had one job. You had one job to think of an answer to this question.
I came up with the question, okay?
You couldn't even...
I did.
Dear
I did
audience, we apologize for Sapir's utter laziness in not thinking of a chocolate bar. I'm sorry, I'll go back to Mr. Rogers. We appreciate your question, and we respect the fact that you didn't give an answer.
Right.
Right. You're welcome. And that'll do it for us at the InSearch SEO podcast. Do not forget, next Tuesday, an all-new episode of the InSearch SEO podcast. It's been in search because we're all in search of something.
Of something.
Like Mr. Rogers. Bye.
Bye.